Then, do you think it's possible that there are two common conceptions of what progressive Christianity is? Because it seems that when I interact with people in my comment sections or when I talk to people in my youth group, one of the key problems I hear is that a lot of times they're like, these progressive Christians are completely destroying the Bible or disrespecting the Bible, or they might be saying something along the lines of, I think it's commonly confused with some form of far extreme liberal Christians, perhaps, if that's a way I could put it. I think that potentially there are kind of the progressive Christianity that you're presenting, and then there's another progressive Christianity that people attack more like commonly. Do you think that that could potentially be the case?
You know what? So when I teach worldview, I'm going to segue into your question in just a minute. When I teach worldview, one of the points I make is I'm critical of worldview charts. These used to be quite popular among Christians, evangelicals, where they would seek to summarize all like 5-6 major worldviews, and they would do so on a single chart, and then they would break it down into, well, what's their view of God, the human condition, the nature of salvation, and so on. And you memorize these columns on the charts, and you've memorized each of these worldviews. So you know what a Buddhist thinks, you know what a Hindu thinks, you know what a Muslim thinks. The problem is when you get on and talk to the people who are actually Muslim and Buddhist and Hindu, you find that often they diverge from your chart because reality is a lot more complex than something we can just put on a chart. And I think it's very much the same case when it comes to progressive Christians. So I would even want to push beyond what you're suggesting, beyond saying, well, there's two types. I think really what you need to do is if someone calls himself a progressive Christian, find out what they mean by it. Because some people, like with this website I mentioned, progressivechristianity.org, they may hold views that are fundamentally unorthodox and pluralistic and are a denial of the historic doctrine of the incarnation. Or they may take a much more orthodox stance on something. And so we should simply talk to people and find out what they believe, because I think there's an enormous diversity among progressive Christians, just like there is among evangelical Christians.
Do you think it's potentially, do you think it would then be the case that perhaps it's almost impossible to kind of either attack or kind of critique or kind of defend the progressive Christian kind of label just because it's almost a completely personal kind of term or a way how people interact with the idea?
Well, again, I think it's just like the term evangelical or the term Christian, is that there's an enormous diversity in its application. And so the best that we can do is to explain how we are defining the term and then give an explanation for why we use the term that way and defend the qualities that we ascribe to that term if we want to defend them. So insofar as I refer to myself as a progressive Christian, I'm going to explain what I mean by that and then defend why I think that that's a worthy stance. And I think one of the things here is to be contextualized about this. So, for example, I get asked, often, is it, do you call yourself an evangelical? And I will say it depends on the audience. If I'm going to call myself an evangelical in a particular context, and the first thing people are going to assume is that I support Donald Trump and all these sorts of things that come with the baggage of American evangelicalism, I'm probably not going to use the term in that context. If there's another context where the term doesn't have that kind of baggage and I don't need to explain what I mean by it, then I may use the term there. And I think it's similar with progressive Christian.
Just on a side note, me in Hong Kong, like me and my family, we commonly look at America and we're like, what on earth is going on there with all of these evangelical terms and everything? It's like, it almost comes to the case where like Christianity and people's religions cannot be separated from their traditional political standpoints. And that just kind of drives me insane all the time. It's like, if you're a Christian, you must support guns. I'm like, what are you on about? But it is what it is, I suppose.